Hello and welcome to another edition of Coffee Talk on the Pitcherless Podcast Network. My name is Trevor Hooth. I am joined, of course, by Nate Kosher. Nate, it's been a week. We're in our new off-season format, so I haven't talked to you since our last edition.
Yeah, I was just thinking that too earlier today. So all the listeners and viewers out there know we are going to be going every other week during the off season, or most of the off season at least till things start heating up for fantasy.
Yeah, around the time that you're doing your drafts and stuff, we'll probably ramp things back up. But for the vast majority of the off season, it will be an every other week schedule. So keep that in mind. Right now, the Tigers are still playing Major League Baseball, which is not something that anybody thought would be happening on October 7th, except I guess maybe the Tigers, but they're still going, Nate.
Yeah, this is just insane. Awesome for your team. I mean, most of the year we were like, oh, they're doing
Fine.
pretty good, or they're doing a little bit better maybe than you expected, about 500 ball, the whole season.
Yeah.
And then I don't think we thought they had no shot at the playoffs, right? But maybe end of the season, a nice little run. Next year, they could make some noise. But man, they got hot against all odds, and they just tied it up 1-1 today.
Scorching. Yeah, and the way they did it, I mean, I was nervous, admittedly, when they announced it was Tyler Holton starting game one. I know you have to do bullpen games. I get that they
Yeah.
happened in the playoffs. I get that they were doing that down the stretch as they were, winning all these games. To start the first game of a division series, it just weirded me out to have a bullpen game. I don't know why. It's irrational because it shouldn't matter what game is a bullpen game, but it just kind of didn't sit right. They lost 5-0. I
Yeah,
think
it
it was
almost
5-0, right? They lost, but
sends the wrong message almost. You're
yeah.
like, yeah, I agree. It's kind of
But
weird.
then game two, it's Scooble shove day. So it's you come back, you have Tarek Skubal on the mound. You know you're going to win. I mean, they won today off of what was just a phenomenal moment. I mean, let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
We're getting to the end of the game here. In
It was a
comes
pitcher's
Emmanuel
duel.
Clase. Yeah,
Pitcher's duel the whole game,
yeah.
right?
In comes Emmanuel Clase, who you talked about as a potential Cy Young Award winner, giving up 5 earned runs through the entire regular season,
Yes.
and lets up a 3-run home run to former 19th round selection Kerry Carpenter, who, I mean, that has to be one of the biggest swings in Tigers history. And this dude was a 19th rounder.
Yeah. I mean, it's easily one of the top moments for the Tigers ever, right?
It has to be. I mean,
Definitely in recent
winning the
history.
World Series in '84, like that's probably, I mean, obviously got to be the top moment in franchise history, but just in terms of isolated moments and just clutch moments, this has to be one of the most important and, dare I say the word, iconic Detroit Tigers moments in the entire franchise. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm totally with you. And having it come off of Class A, obviously it's elevates it because, he's been pretty much Mariano Rivera like closer and was untouchable all season. And
mhm.
baseball is crazy, man. You don't know what might happen.
And not only is this off of Emmanuel Clase, not only is Kerry Carpenter just, I mean, not only did it give the Tigers the win, this is the hardest home run ever hit off of Emmanuel Clase. This
Yeah,
was, I
that's
believe I
awesome.
saw a stat, it was the first time in his career he's given up a 3-run home run. Like, this is just a bunch of stuff that's all culminated from the Tigers got hot at the right time. They got everybody back. I mentioned that last week, right? Parker Meadows comes back. He robbed a home run today. Parker Meadows comes back. Gary Carpenter comes back. Like, this is the team that was supposed to be there all year, but they got hurt, or Torkelson didn't perform. Whatever the case, this is so much fun to have happening right now, and just hats off to this team. They've been playing with house money this entire run. They were not supposed to be here, yet here they are. And the
Exactly.
division series is tied 1-1, and I hope Tarek Skubal pitches every single game for the rest of the season.
So, when you were looking at the end of the season and we're talking about the Tigers and, will they get in or not? Just them getting in is a win, right? And then even if they got knocked out right away, I assume you would still have been happy with that,
Loved it. Are you kidding me?
right?
Loved it.
Made the
This,
playoffs
yeah, I mean, look,
unexpectedly.
this team they were sellers at the trade deadline. They traded Jack Flaherty to the Dodgers, which is now its own storyline over there
Yeah.
on the West Coast. They traded away, Carson Kelly. I was about to say Andrew Kisner, but that's not true. He was already there. But they traded Kelly to Texas, right? They traded. My gosh, I'm losing my mind, right? But they made all these trades of major leaguers. They were selling at the deadline, and they somehow parlayed that into we're going to win down the stretch using, I mean, really young guys who were the catalysts that were, new faces on the team, right? You have Riley Green, obviously. Torkelson comes back up, and he's been better. I mentioned Meadows. You mentioned Kerry Carpenter. Trey
Our
Sweeney
guy
has
Trey
been a part
Sweeney.
of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jace Young came up towards the end of the year. Like they put the end of the season in the hands of the young dudes, and the young dudes were like, "Thank you, let's make the playoffs," and they did. It's insane. It's awesome. It's so much fun. But there's nothing that there could do now to make me think that this was a failure of a season for the Detroit Tigers. Just
Yeah.
making the playoffs, even if they had missed the playoffs, just playing meaningful games down the stretch at the end of the season, that is a win for the Tigers based on how long this rebuild has been going on. So, I consider this a win. There's nothing that you could do to convince me that this was a poor season for the Detroit Tigers. I'm worried how far along, if this was just dumb luck and how far along they are, but I think that this hopefully kicks something into high gear. Like you don't want to play above where the rebuild plan is at, but they're doing this with pretty young guys at the core. So I think it should be hopefully a pretty fun few years for the Tigers as they start to build around this. Here's my concern. Here's my biggest concern.
Yep.
We kind of said this about the Arizona Diamondbacks a year ago. The Diamondbacks made it farther than the NLDS. But it seems like this year was kind of a step back, Nate.
Yeah, I know. That's where if you were listening to this podcast a month ago, 2 months ago, like I would have called you crazy if you said, "Oh yeah, the Tigers are going to make the playoffs. The Diamondbacks are not going to make the playoffs." Because
I would have called you crazy. You could have stopped at Tigers make the playoffs. I would have called you crazy.
The whole time it seemed, the Diamondbacks from probably July 1st onward were in position. So they got as close as 2 games back, I think, of the Dodgers at one point when they were really hot from like July to August. They were on an awesome streak and the offense was rolling. But even when they started to lose, when they weren't as good, they were still in the wild card, one of the wild card slots, like literally the entire season. Then I think it was as soon as like 5 days from the end of the season, they were still a 93% odds to make the playoffs, something like that. It was just ridiculous. Like the whole time it looked like they're going to make it, but then they had a game against the Brewers. I don't know if you saw it. They were up 8-0. It was a huge series. They had already won 3 games, but it was a 4-game series. They were up 8-0, ended up losing that game. It was a crushing way to lose, but at the same time, a lot of people were pointing to that, and I'm thinking, you still got to be happy. The Brewers were, division champs, and they took 3 out of 4. There's so many games you could look at. Basically, it came down to the last week or so. They kind of collapsed. This hurricane pushing the games the next day. That was not great for baseball, and you knew that they were going to split.
Be safe, our listeners in Florida. Let's just throw that out there real quick. That's the next hurricane's coming.
Yeah. I heard that. Yes.
So be safe if you are in the evacuation areas.
obviously that's more important than what we're talking about.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure.
Thank you, Trevor, for
Sorry to
bringing that.
interrupt you, Nate, but
No, thank you. 100%. Way more important and bigger things happening in the world. But by pushing that to the next day, either the Mets or the Braves had to sweep for the Diamondbacks to get in because of the tiebreaker. And you knew they were going to split the games. I mean, they probably would have liked to knock the other out because they're division rivals, but you could see the writing was on the wall. Anyways, Diamondbacks missed the playoffs. They won more games than last season. Their run differential was also way better than last season, and their offense was clicking. But the pitching, once again, the bullpen let them down.
Erod.
And the pitching never really clicked. So Erod was hurt the whole year. He was okay toward the end, but Jordan Montgomery was a disaster. He was terrible. He signed late, showed up late, was just a mess. And
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna ask you about that. Keep going.
yeah, and then injuries to the starting pitching. So like before the season, it's like, wow, they have 4 to 5 good starters. Didn't turn out that way. So yeah, it's funny. They can see the Tigers almost in that same hot streak that the Diamondbacks had last year. Good young guys coming together and it just magically working. I hope that's not the case for your Tigers, but I can see the similarities there. And it definitely stinks. It's like, oh yeah, the whole season we're going to be in the playoffs until the last day. But that's what happens. It's ironic, when there's 160 plus games and it comes down to the very last day or like one game. But it is what it is. They still have a great young core. I think they got to reshuffle the bullpen, but we'll see.
All right. So I have two questions about what you just said and the Diamondbacks season overall that I would like to ask you. The
Yes.
first, I'm going to keep it with Jordan Montgomery, but did you see the report that came out from Bob Nightingale? He said that finger pointing has begun in the aftermath of the Diamondbacks. Owner Ken Kendrick blasts the signing of starter Jordan Montgomery to a 2-year, $47.5 million contract, blaming himself for making the recommendation to the front office late in spring training. So I guess the quote is, looking back in hindsight, a horrible decision to have invested that money in a guy who performed as poorly as he did. It was our biggest mistake this season from a talent standpoint, and I'm the perpetrator of that. So one, he is taking the blame, but two, he's throwing blame at Jordan Montgomery, which is absolutely outside of what you would expect a Major League Baseball organization to do. So as a Diamondbacks fan, like I have my thoughts outside looking in, but as a Diamondbacks fan who's watched how this organization is run and all that stuff, what do you make of that?
Yeah. So I was super. I mean, everyone was thinking this, but I was super surprised that he actually
He said
said it
the
out
inside
loud.
words out loud.
Yeah, said it, and on the record too, not like
Yeah.
some story coming out, rumors, about this or that, but on the record. And so Montgomery has an option for next season that he would be dumb not to accept. Pick up
$22.5
after.
million option.
Yeah, there it is. After the disaster season he had, I was shocked by it. I mean, it's nice to see the owner taking ownership of the issue, but the more I was reading about it too, I'm thinking um, he's almost like trying. He's still on the team, which is crazy, but he's trying to like have him in a way off the team. By having these comments on the record and just saying it was that disaster, like trying to get a clean cut, even though they don't have money. They want him to go elsewhere. That was the point of the comments, I think.
Yeah, and that's how, again, from outside looking, that's what it seems like, right? I mean, and maybe this is just, I'm a Tigers fan, as we know, and as some of you may also know, there was a player who we all kind of hoped wouldn't take the option, and he took the option. So I think that is the move by the owner to try to create such a toxic work environment for Jordan Montgomery that he says, you know what, this isn't worth $22.5 million.
Yeah,
That's
let's just
tough to
cut
that's tough to say out loud, but
cut
but he's trying
bait.
he's trying to say this is not a place where you want to play baseball next year because we don't want to make you feel welcome. Like this is a Hail Mary, is what it seemed like. Because you
Yeah.
know he's going to accept the option. You don't think it's going to be worth it, but he 22.5 million. You can't really just cut him. So you're like throwing a Hail Mary. Don't come
Well,
back.
if you remember, I mean, just last season, he he was traded to the Rangers. He pitched well, and he
Mhm.
pitched some big games in the playoffs down the stretch for the Rangers, pitched in the World Series. So I wouldn't like it's not the end of the road for him. I think another team would gladly take him, probably a pitching hungry team or someone like maybe like someone like the Twins where they got to try something different, but
So
I don't know if he can come back after this.
yeah, see, I don't. And in that situation, you probably have to attach a prospect, or you have to eat a bunch of salary. Either
Right.
way, so it just
Yeah.
depends on how badly do you not want Jordan Montgomery playing for you, and we'll see. My second question:
Yeah.
are you worried at all about Corbin Carroll? And I know that that's a wild thing to say. Okay, it might be at least, but he put up basically the same home run numbers. He had 3 less home runs this year. He did steal about 20 less bases, but also his average dropped. His full, in 565 at bats in 2023, he hit 285. He hit 231 this year in 589 at bats. That's a significant drop off in just the amount he's getting on base. And Corbin Carroll, yes, has power. Obviously, he's over 20 home runs 2 seasons in a row, but he's also fast. Like that's a huge part of his game. So, are you worried about where his bat is at right now?
No, I'm not. It was a down. I mean, overall, it's a down season, but his second half was much better, and he did show flashes of his rookie season and what he can do. The numbers overall aren't great, but he did really have a better second half than the first half. The steals is interesting though, because the home runs and ribbies ended up being pretty close. Just the
I mean,
steals were
that's
way
just
down.
yeah. Well, that's just getting on base. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
opportunity.
right.
I
So
think at that you want to look at how often did he get thrown out, and he got caught stealing more actually. So 8 times and was successful 35 this year. Last year he got caught 5 times, was successful 54.
I think he, you know, a young player, he's struggling. He is probably in his head a bit and off his game. And when you're tentative, maybe not playing well, he's not going to try to steal as many because he's not feeling confident, or that kind of thing. He was in his head. I'm not worried about him though. He did look better than the second half. He had some games and stretches where it's like, oh yeah, this guy's still awesome at baseball, and I do think he'll bounce back.
He is awesome at baseball. So let me ask you this then. This is a fantasy baseball podcast after all. So
Oh,
Corbin Carroll was top of drafts heading into this year. Um,
yes.
top near the top wherever you got him. I assume that will not be the case next year. He's not. I don't think he'll fall too far. But how far are you letting him fall right now before you'd feel comfortable taking a chance on him for next season?
Good question. Yeah, I wonder what is it like his average ADP would have been in certain leagues. I mean, I could see him falling second, late second round, third round, maybe third round at the latest. But being a Diamondbacks homer, like me personally, I'd probably take him sooner. But I could see him falling. He was probably a first round pick, right? In some leagues,
I would imagine. Yeah.
yeah, like the top 12 or 15. I would say
I don't have the ADP offhand, but I probably.
yeah. I mean, I'm guessing so. I would say yeah, late second round, maybe third round, early third round, just because I think people are scared with the injuries, the shoulder and wrist. Um, is there some lingering, underlying thing going on with him, or it was just a sophomore slump? And he did look better. I think the speed is obviously still there. He had more triples this year.
Hmm.
So I wouldn't let him slide just because I like him and I'd pick him, but the average listener, I think you can let him go further along than you obviously did this year.
Yeah, I think, and this is just a wild guess. I don't think we're going to know anything until mock draft starts. That whole season begins. But based on what he did this year versus the hype he had coming in, I'm going to venture a wild guess that in categories, I would feel comfortable with him if I could get him in the third or fourth. In Roto, I think I would still take him in the second. Even if I had a back end of the first round pick, I might push for him. But that's just
Yeah,
because he's so many categories.
that's a
Even
good.
with his down year, he's still 2020. So I think Roto he probably has more value right now than he would in categories.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's probably true. And the on base percentage was down, and his average, I think he only ended up like with 230.
Mhm.
So that it is scary when he looked so good, but I think he'll bounce back.
Yeah, I'm not that worried about it either. But Nate, right now we are going to take a quick timeout. When we come back, we got more postseason talk coming up. Uh, young guys too. I mean, that's just what we do here, Nate. So we will be right back with more coffee talk on the Pitcherless Podcast Network, where we are always ready for that next cup of coffee. And welcome back to Coffee Talk on the Pitcherless Podcast Network. My name is Trevor Hooth. I am, of course, joined by Nate Kosher, and we are glad you are with us, Nate. We just talked about our own teams for a long time.
We
So
did.
anybody who's wanting to know about the Tigers or the Diamondbacks, we got you covered. It turns out, I just learned this actually while we were taking our break just now. There's more than just two teams in the MLB. So
Oh,
what
shoot.
we're gonna do, yeah. So we're gonna have to keep talking about some other things. So I guess I'm gonna leave this broad for you. What other? Because we talked about Detroit and Cleveland. What other matchup right now are you excited about, or are you paying close attention to in the playoffs right now?
Well, first, I won't answer your question directly, but then I'll get to it. I think it's funny how the AL Central just showed out because we, maybe more me, but I think a few times I was sort of negative on the AL Central, saying it's kind of
Oh, I definitely
boring.
was too. It was not just you. It was
Okay,
absolutely me too.
they're never, it's never that good of a division. It's kind of a toss up. Maybe the Guardians will win, maybe the Twins.
I always
You
said it
know,
was up for grabs. Like you don't have to do that much to be a front runner
right?
in the AL Central.
Exactly. And the teams didn't. I mean, the Guardians, I guess, had a nice year, but other than that, and the Royals started out hot. I think they kind of slowly faded. You wouldn't expect we're here in the division series with three AL Central, teams active. So I think that's pretty fun. But I think the matchup I'm most interested in, other than my team being out, so then where am I gonna get my attention to? The Mets and Phillies is pretty fun. Um,
Hmm.
the a lot of big personalities. I Obviously the Yankees are also in the playoffs, but two premier sports cities. The Mets usually aren't as good, so when they're good, they get a lot of love and attention. The Phillies, I do like Bryce Harper. Um, he's fun to root for, and I just think that's going to be a good series. LA and San Diego, people are probably also interested in that. The amount of star power, right? Otani playoff debut, a lot to talk about there.
I mean,
Um, so those are the two I would say.
yeah, for sure. Are you seeing the fights and the throwing things on the field and all that happening in that LA San Diego
Yeah,
series?
I didn't see it live. I read about that though.
Hmm.
So fans were like throwing garbage on the field, or were they mad?
Yeah, I guess yeah. And then I was seeing videos of just outside, people were already fighting just as they were leaving one of the games. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Playoff baseball, people are fired up. I guess another division rival
Mhm.
matchup, and that's they've been kind of trying to be the Padres have been trying to be rivals to the Dodgers without much success.
No, but
But
they have, they're doing it the way every fan wants the organization to do it. Just throw money at it and go make all the trades
true,
and bring everybody in and bolster everything up. And it's not working.
yeah, and so it's been fun to watch. I mean, it's a lot of big cities are involved, and classic sports cities are in, which is fun to see.
Yeah, I mean, you got
Um,
New York twice, LA,
Philly,
Philly, Cleveland, Kansas
and
City,
then
yeah, San Diego, and
Cleveland
Detroit,
and
obviously.
Detroit are classic.
I Oh my gosh, I can't believe I know you talked about that. I don't mean to brush past it. 3 out of the 4 AL teams left are AL Central teams.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know
And what's
that that
crazy is,
that was the biggest thing to me.
the 2 missing teams, the Twins, they were in the conversation earlier in the year, and the White Sox only missed the playoffs by like 130 games. So
They were there.
they were right
Actually,
there.
a couple things turned out differently. You never know. Um, no, but the Twins were another collapse. They were in position most of the year and just went belly up at the end of the year.
Well, that's the team you could talk about a lot. You live right there, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm noticing a trend with you, Nate. Stay away from Detroit.
I guess so. Yeah, I think that the Twins said they're going to bring Rocco Baldelli back, but they almost need a fresh start. I think um, there was some infighting there too. Like what's his name, Royce Lewis, sort of was like talking about a lot of pressures being put on the young players, and then he kind of got called out, and it was almost like the first time he'd been criticized because he's just been hitting grand slams, his whole career. So yeah, there was another collapse there. But how about predictions, Trevor? Where do you see? Let's the World Series prediction. Who's coming out of the AL and NL?
Oh man. Um,
And this is jinx proof segment. So whatever you say, it's not going to jinx the Tigers or hurt the Tigers.
the problem is I love the Tigers and I want them to win the World Series. I just don't know if I can fully put my brand endorsement behind it. As a fan, I absolutely can. That team cannot be beaten. But as you know, the person on this podcast trying to give good information, I don't know if I can say the Tigers. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Obviously, you'd like nothing more, but
Yeah, I think it's really hard for me to see any team other than the Yankees making it out of the AL at this point, and maybe that's still because I think the AL Central was just weak and got lucky somehow. But the Yankees also, like, that lineup is just it's tough. It
yeah.
is tough, tough, tough. Uh, and so I think Yankees make it, and I think I really want it to be the Phillies. I really want it to be Yankees Phillies. And I want the Phillies to win. I think that's going to be my prediction going at the end. I want Bryce Harper to get one. I want Nick
I
Castellanos to
know
get
that
one.
that
Like
would be nice.
I really love the energy on that team, and I hope that they can pull it off.
So I'm with you on the Yankees, 100%. I also think the Yankees themselves, anything less than a World Series, maybe even a championship,
Has to
would
be
be
championship.
yeah, like not even getting there. From the NL, it almost seems like too easy to say, oh, it's gonna be the Dodgers because they're also stacked. They have all the money in the world, all the superstars in the world, and now they have Otani, which brings something new to it. But they've done this before where they're awesome and then they collapse in the playoffs like
Hmm.
regularly. So I'd like to see the Yankees and Dodgers just because like the gigantic star power. Um, that would be fun, and Ohtani in the World Series would be fun. But I don't think they're going to do it. So I'm going to say it will be San Diego, but I want Philadelphia to do it.
I think you just became the most hated person that by everybody who's not a Yankees and Dodgers fan by suggesting that World Series.
I'm going to
Oh
say,
my goodness! I mean, good for you for saying it, but I don't think that's any. I don't think anybody wants to see that.
no, I don't really like the Padres, but I just don't think that, I don't know, the Dodgers, I don't trust the Dodgers.
Yeah, they well because they collapse every year. I mean,
Yeah.
they won in 2020 in the shortened season, but they do collapse every single year. So I think it makes sense to be wary of that. So I'm with you there. I want to add to the point. You said that it's championship or bust for the Yankees this year, and it has to be. I mean, it has to be, Nate, because one of your two biggest pieces in your lineup is entering free agency. And you made the move for him specifically to win this year because he could come back, but you don't know if he's coming back or not. Right.
Good
So
point.
they didn't trade for Juan Soto to win the World Series next year. They traded for Juan Soto because this is the year they're going to win the World Series.
They're going for it. Yeah.
Right. They haven't won enough in their history. No, I'm kidding. They haven't won recently, though, and they need to get another one, right? They need number 29.
28?
It's 28, 29. Oh, my
like
goodness.
that.
I feel like we should know that. I feel like it's a fact we should know offhand.
I think they have 27. I want to say they have 27.
I'm looking it up right now.
But, yeah, think about that being a Yankees fan and how spoiled you are. I think I need...
All right, they have 27, so they're in search of 28.
I need my 28th World Series.
Yeah, but again, they haven't won recently, right? So they need to get back on that horse. And they said this is the year. And maybe they bring Soto back and they can make a run at it for the next few years. But as of right now, next year you have Aaron Judge and the rest of them, but you're losing Juan Soto. And I mean, it's one player, but that is one gigantic player out of your lineup.
And if he were to leave, you almost feel like if you're Juan Soto, where else would you go? I mean, so yeah, maybe you could get the maximum money from a LA or San Diego. I don't even know. They probably couldn't take his contract on, or the Cubs, or one of the teams that are always in it. But where would you improve your situation more than just sticking with the Yankees?
Detroit. I'm only half kidding.
If Torkelson starts hitting again.
Look, Detroit, let me tell you. So let's listen, okay? AJ Hinch is a great manager. Players are wanting to come to Detroit now.
That's true.
They made the playoffs out of nowhere this year, so you're joining a team that's ready for contention. And they have the money. I mean, Miggy's off the books. They have the big contract to Javi, but that should be up, I want to say, at the end of next year. And so
I think that's right. And they have an ace. They have a true ace.
Right. Like they have these pieces ready to go. And I think you add Juan Soto, you add yourself a legitimate star power bat into that lineup with the youth and the fun going on. Hey, man, I'm just saying.
Maybe, he might. I don't know. I don't know that much about him. I've watched him. I know he's awesome, gets on base. He has been historically good, but he may feel, I don't know if he has to be the man, or like, this is my franchise. Staying in New York, that's not going to be the case because it's Aaron Judge's team and franchise, right? So maybe there's that where he wants to go be the man and be the face of a different franchise. I don't know. That would be one factor for leaving.
Only Juan Soto knows, but whoever it is going to have to pay because Soto's a Boris client, I believe. So it's going to cost a lot of money. But I'm just saying, man, if the Tigers are going to make a push with this young core, it would make sense. So I'm half kidding when I say Tigers, but also like, let's all speak it into existence as a group.
Yeah, you're hoping.
Be so awesome. Although I don't know that Comerica wouldn't. He's a great hitter, so Comerica doesn't hurt him, but it's not going to be as good as Yankee Stadium was to him.
Right. Yeah. If I had to guess, I don't think he's going to. I think he's going to come back.
Mets are another popular team too. I mean,
I have heard that. Yeah. I
I
guess
don't
we'll
know.
see. The playoffs, it will determine where he goes, obviously, because a lot of these large market teams are still playing.
Maybe he'll go to the White Sox and turn them around.
Now that would be something. So they're going to win 65 games with
There you
him.
go. See, that's improvement. I'm sorry. I know we've talked about this. I feel so bad for the White Sox fans. I mean, look, that team was not good this year. They were historically bad. And they don't even get a first round pick out of it, a chance at a first round pick out of it because it's the lottery system now. They can't even pick inside the top 10.
Yeah, I know. And when you were saying that, something else just popped in my head. You had sent me a story where they basically had like no scouting or analytics department and just said things like throw it low in the zone or like super generic advice. Do you remember the story I'm talking about?
I
It
do,
just
yes,
ripped them
because
apart, the whole
I made the
franchise.
I made the joke on Twitter that the parents in the stands yelling "throw strikes." They were actually giving professional level coaching. So I mean, credit where it's due to them because that was kind of the vibe of the story. That's
That's a good joke.
crazy.
Yeah,
Oh
they
my
were
gosh.
they're basically just like, you know, swing at a fastball down the middle and watch out for anything else.
They said throw more strikes, and that's why Dylan Cease is in San Diego now. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, that's sounds like a total mess.
It's
They just got to blow it up. I mean, they can't get worse.
Well, they
So
did. They did blow it up, but they blew it up at the wrong time. Give it one more honest shot this year because you can't get inside the top 10. Give it one more honest shot. Throw money at it. 1 year contracts, all veterans. See what they do. Do something that makes it more fun than a historically bad season.
true.
Because right now, what you did was win 15 games all year or whatever number it was, and you're not going to be able to reap the quote unquote benefits of it. And so, where does that put you next year? I mean, you have a couple younger guys who you could call up and play. Sure, like Colson Montgomery might get a lot of playing time next year, for example. But where's your organization? Are you going to go out and sign a bunch of guys? No, because they said they were going to cut payroll. So, like, they're still in the
Yeah.
process of tearing down, and they were again so bad this year from the standpoint of their win loss record. Like, I'm not,
Well,
it just
even the veterans that they would be able to attract to play there, it's going to be the guys who are still floating out there at the end of the free agency or looking to latch on or looking to start over, like the Tommy Phams of the world. I know we talked about him before. People like that, 1 year contract, kind of a make or break. Someone who's really old and trying to hold on, or they're going to have to just develop from within. I mean, that's their best bet. But like you said, no draft pick, no high draft pick this year.
yeah. And so for some reason, I'm thinking of this like this is a PR nightmare for them
It really is. Yeah.
because what you have what you have in front of you is something not great. And you're already saying you're going to cut payroll. So we are assuming it's going to be not great again next year.
I don't know why they had to come out and say that part of it.
I don't know either. But
That was a stupid move.
I almost think that just, again, I don't work for a baseball team. I don't run PR for a baseball team. But I almost think that if you're the White Sox, the only way that you can really grab hold of your fans right now is to say this offseason, you can have Garrett Crochet. We need one, let's say, top 50 prospect who we can play at the major league level next year. And one or two other, highly touted, high level prospect, whatever they want. But I think they need to trade Garrett Crochet for all he's worth right now. Tell the fans, hey, it's going to be a rough year. Here's what we have for you.
Yeah.
We have Jason Dominguez or whoever it is. It's not going to be Jason Dominguez, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Like
Yes.
that, it's you trade for a guy like that. So you can say we have them and them plus Colson Montgomery. Like that's what the Tigers were going to be this year. The Tigers were supposed to not be great, but it was supposed to be Riley Green Spencer Torkelson, Colt Keith. Do that. I think that's all you could do. The problem is, do you get rid of Garrett Crochet because he's young and he's, he pitched at a really good level this year? It's just hard.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the fans they already know they're not going to be good next year, right? So they're not expecting much. So yes, trading away a young potential budding ace hurts, but I don't think his value is going to be higher than it is now, like you said. So maybe they should just maximize that, try to get a package back, or get like one stud at least.
Go to the Red Sox. Say we need Marcelo Mayer and 2 other prospects. You can have Garrett Crochet.
Even medium level prospects that could plug in or have a chance. It's something, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So just my 2 cents on that, Nate. We got to take a quick time out now. When we come back, what rookies, what prospects, what September call-ups, who do you think is going to have an impact next year fantasy-wise? That's what we're going to talk about on the other end of this. Right now, though, a quick time out here on Coffee Talk on the Pitcherless Podcast Network, where we are always ready for that next cup of coffee. And welcome back to Coffee Talk on the Pitcherless Podcast Network. My name is Trevor Hooth. Of course, Nate Kosher is with me right now. We are talking baseball. We have been focused a lot on playoffs and just breaking down teams, Nate. I think maybe we should touch on a little fantasy here to round things out. Lots of young players. The new CBA promotes it, but lots of young players have been up. Lots of young players have gotten a chance. And we're heading into next season's draft. That's what our thought process is. Some of these players might be helpful. So I guess, are there any players specifically you want to talk about? Any players that stand out to you that you think absolutely you need to go after, or maybe some sleepers heading into a redraft next year?
Yeah, I mean the obvious answers, that you jump at. If we're looking, let's just say rookies from this season. So I'm most excited, and then maybe we get in some sleepers. I would say I'm most excited for Jackson Churio. Where he ended up, he was slow to start the year. As the season picked up, he got better. And after, basically the second half of the season, he hit above 300, and he got the youngest player ever to end up with a 2020 season. So that's awesome. In the playoffs, he had a 2 home run game. Once again, was some historic stat about, youngest guy ever to do it, something like that. But if you look at his season stats, 21 home runs, 78 RBI, 77 RBI, 78 runs. He slashed 271, 325, 469 with 21 stolen bases. So the Brewers signed him to that huge deal right away. I would say the first two months he didn't look great, but after that, it's like he's figured it out. So he's the one guy I'm most excited about. I mean, I think probably a lot of other people are. I don't know. Being in the NL, he probably won't win, or he's not going to win Rookie of the Year, right? We know that.
Paul Skeens.
Paul Skeens is going to do that. And I guess I could have said Paul Skeens too, but I was thinking of position players. So
I
he's
was going to say Paul Skeens for sure.
I'm high on Churio, but yeah, go ahead on Skeens. I mean, he had an amazing season.
Yeah, I'm not going to read off numbers. Like, we know Paul Skeens was good. He went from first round draft pick to all-star in a matter of like 6 days or however small of time that was.
Exactly.
So like, there's no use in going over the numbers. Here's what I'm going to say. If I'm in the back of a draft in redraft leagues, and I consider to be last 2 picks of the first round, I will 100% of the time, well, I guess not 100%, but assuming that the arms are there, I will go pocket aces. That is like, I love that strategy when I'm in that point of the draft, because all the like top tier hitters are usually gone. So why not get 2 of the top tier pitchers, and you can dominate that every week. I would, and this is probably not a hot take, I would take Paul Skeens as one of my pocket aces next year. So if I'm picking the back end of that first or early part of that second, Paul Skeens has to be gone, in my opinion. And I'm assuming most people's opinion. I hope most people's opinion. But
Yeah,
that's how good Paul Skeens has proved himself to be.
I think. I mean, that's yeah. I don't think that's crazy to say. I mean, he was
Mhm.
so good. There was no transition time. There was no learning curve. You know, within 5 starts, it's like, well, is he top 10 pitcher in this league? How high up on that list is he? So yeah, I think the
Like if
sky's the
I'm
limit.
if I'm in a 12 team and I'm picking 12, 13, I'm hoping I get Scooble Skeens.
That's a great strategy. And if you end up with that, you're going to be pretty happy about it.
And Scooble's may not be there. Skeens may not be there. I don't know what the drafts are going to look like next year, but like that's in my mind. That's kind of where I'm putting Skeens in terms of how I would draft him. And Churio, I think, is probably right around where we were talking about Carroll. I mean, he's
Yeah,
up there for me. But I also
yeah.
draft young. I'm a prospects drafter. Like if you're under 25, you're probably going to wind up on one of my rosters.
I agree. I think, yeah, it's someone I'd be willing to take a little bit early because I think that ceiling is so high. And we're talking about redraft here, but in a dynasty league, I mean, he's got to be one of the top people you can have. Like if I don't know, I know the dynasty rankings are different sometimes. He just, yeah, looks like a stud.
He does, and so absolutely another guy. Colt Keith, I'm going to be taking obviously not as high as Cherio, but I'm all in on Colt Keith next year. I would probably be aggressive on him depending on where his ADP starts to lie, but I was way in on Colt Keith by the end of the year too. I know that's shocking considering I'm a Tigers fan, but just throwing that out there too.
Yeah, he did have a nice year, and the numbers overall seem to. I was watching him in one of my fantasy leagues, and he also had second and third base eligibility. So that was nice in the league that I was in, and I think his overall numbers were okay
Mhm.
at the end of the season. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
they were. He went on a tear. I mean, he was one of the best hitters of baseball there for a minute. It seemed like. I don't think that's a fully accurate statement, but he was really, really good for a while there. I don't think he has a hit in the playoffs yet, but he was really good during the regular season.
yeah, he finished strong. Um, as far as sleepers go,
Mm.
um, let's
Jackson
talk.
Jobe, I don't think he counts, but I just had to mention his name, right? He got called up a few days before the end of the season as the Tigers were trying to hold on. I
Yeah,
fully expect him to make the team out of camp next year and be a part of the Tigers and for the full season, unless for whatever reason he doesn't play well. But I would also be drafting him very aggressively. He is a data unicorn. His slider is up near 3,000 RPMs or over 3,000 RPMs. His fastball gets really good IVB. Like all this publicly available data that I've been able to find. This dude is a data unicorn, and it shows when he pitches. He is so good.
yeah, I know. He's kind of forgot about him toward, with the playoffs starting, and I haven't seen if he's done anything. Has he appeared? Do you know?
He is not.
No? Okay. So, um, yeah, next season though, lock him up. I would say he's going to be another guy to look at. I'm going to throw a sleeper at you here. So, this is relief pitchers aren't that exciting in fantasy, but sometimes you need some relievers.
Oh, I
And
apologize. Jackson Jobe did debut. I don't know what I'm talking about. He pitched against the Astros. I was thinking this Guardians series. I completely had surpassed this Astros series. But yes, Jobe did
okay,
pitch against the Astros. And yeah, so apologies for that.
so in the playoffs, he did appear in the playoffs.
Yes, he recorded one out, gave up 2 runs, 1 earned. So it didn't go great, but he did pitch. I was just thinking this Guardian series. So yes,
No,
Jackson Jobe has
that's
playoff
fair.
experience.
That's fair. So speaking of relievers, not that exciting when it comes to fantasy, but I was just looking over stuff earlier today, and someone who I had on my radar. I mean, I'd heard of him, and I knew he started off the season well, and I didn't follow after that. But Cade Smith, speaking of the Guardians, um, if you saw, I don't know if you've seen his full season numbers, but he threw 1.91 ERA, 0.9 WHIP, and in 75 innings, he struck out 103 and only walked 17 hitters. Led all rookies with 28 holds, and obviously was a big part of the Cleveland bullpen. But those are some dominant reliever numbers. And if you were in a league that counts holds, he'd be someone to keep in the back of your mind, tuck away. Obviously, not in the range of the people we've been talking about, but I always try to find the sneaky relievers that also, this probably isn't a good example of it, but who maybe has a chance to be a closer someday, right? Because then their stock would rise that much. I don't think it's him, but if you're in a holds league, he had an awesome season, and the strikeouts, that's an awesome ratio. That would help you out. So him, and then another guy I've talked about before a lot was Justin Martinez with the Diamondbacks. If you remember, I was saying, looks like he could be their closer. Has great stuff, and toward the end of the season, he basically was handed the closing role. Ended up with 8 saves, 2.48 WHIP, 2.48 ERA. Where he struggles though is the WHIP. And the walks are his issue. So 1.31 WHIP, but awesome stuff. Potential to take that job because Seawald, I don't think, will be back. He struggled. So just a couple of relievers to keep in mind further on in your draft, but some nice rookie seasons from those guys.
Yeah, I like both of those. I'm trying to think of who mine is because I want to default to Trey Sweeney, but we've talked about Trey Sweeney quite a bit. So I think I'm just going to throw a dart at the wall, a guy that I've liked a lot in the past who's got some MLB time this year and whatever. It's another reliever with the Reds, Yasser Zulueta. I was a huge fan of this guy. I can't honestly tell you where his stuff is now. I didn't watch him pitch this year, but I think he had 16 innings in the majors with 20 strikeouts. So he still has the swing and miss stuff that he had before. He was kind of up and down mostly towards the end of the year, but I think given a full season at the big league level, I think he could prove to be a very, very effective reliever and a potentially leveraged reliever, whether that be closing or not. I don't know. But I do think that there is a potential leverage reliever in there. So I want to just throw his name out there.
That's a good deep cut.
And then the other one, I'm going to stick with the Tigers because, that's what I do. I'm kind of interested in Dylan Dingler. He hit, he's not on the postseason roster. He did debut with the Tigers this year, hit 195, I think it was in a short sample at the big league club, but he was playing well. There's a youth movement in Detroit, so I feel like they might want to give him a longer run early next year. And I think that he's an athletic catcher. If he can hit, I think that there might be a new fun catcher potentially on the market. And I don't know that you have to draft him necessarily next year unless everyone else is gone. And also that will depend on some news. But I think Dylan Dingler might be interesting heading into redraft leagues next year. Of course, listen to Coffee Talk because we'll talk about that as the drafts approach.
We indeed will. So who is the Tigers catcher? I'm looking it up. I don't even know right now. Oh, Jake Rogers.
Oh, there it is. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Jake Rogers, the lone remaining piece from the Justin Verlander trade to the Astros all those years ago.
Oh, that's fun.
Is it?
197.
Traded Justin Verlander.
Hit 197 in the regular season. That was a fun trivia fact.
Do you want the rest of the trade? Because I got it all prepared for you.
Sure, yes.
Also, the Tigers also got Franklin Perez, who was the crown jewel of the trade at the time. He needed arm surgery on his shoulder, elbow, whatever, for like 4 years in a row. I mean, it just never materialized. He's just straight arm injuries. And Daz Cameron was the third piece, who is now playing for somebody else.
Oh, I remember him.
Yes. So not a great that Justin Verlander trade didn't turn out very well, but Jake Rogers part of it. He's still with the Tigers, I guess. So rock on.
The fantasy part, though, with Dingler is the opportunity would be there, right? So he could.
Yes. So how much opportunity does he get? That's very
Yeah.
true. But I think he could be a pretty good catcher. He's drafted to be the catcher of the future. It's just the hitting has taken a while to come along. Look, I'll be honest. I have never really been a huge believer in his hitting, but I don't know, man. This Tigers team's just doing stuff, so I'm excited. I'm all in. Like I'm just going to draft all Tigers next year. I think that's where I'm at. But Nate, we are out of time for this episode. Always great to talk to you. Again, remember that on Coffee Talk, our off-season schedule, we are going to be recording and releasing episodes every other week. But still, make sure to follow us on Twitter at Coffee Talk PLP. Our YouTube page is the same thing where you can watch us, record this. Always appreciate you listening. Nate, always good to talk to you. And, of course, we'll be back with another episode in a couple of weeks. Happy playoffs. And, I guess we'll talk to you before the offseason. But happy playoffs. Hopefully the Tigers are still in it when we talk to you next. Thank you for listening. And once again, be safe if you live in Florida, if you're in that evacuation area with those hurricanes hitting. But this has been Coffee Talk on the Pitcherless Podcast Network, where we are always ready for that next cup of coffee.